Thank you to Liberty for this chance to look at paper 3, which is a critical paper. I need to talk about that as well. So I'm looking at Maudi Pilusa. So you've started with essays and you've said, how do we know if it's one of those? So very simply, descriptive essay simply describes. Discursive discusses. Narrative tells a story. Reflective reflects. So when you reflect, usually you describe, but you also include a little bit of story, and then you give your response or your reaction to that. So a reflective essay could be describing all the rain we've been having and then giving your reaction to the rain. Or it could be describing the rain, explaining how there was a flood under the door and your carpets were spoiled, and then you give the response to the little bit of story and the description. Don't forget, we also talk about argumentative essays, which obviously present an argument for and against, and opinionative essays, which give an opinion, and persuasive essays, which try to persuade the reader to do something or to think the way that the writer does. So these are the various kinds of essays that you get. Let's go to the topics that you sent. So we've got an essay of 250 to 300 words in length, and this is what you are given. So if you chose 2019, what kind of essay could you write for that first topic? You could describe what happened to you in 2019. So this is going to go towards narrative, or you could describe what happened, but you could reflect on that. So it could be closer to reflective. If you felt that 2019 had something very particular in it that you wanted to talk about, you could write an opinionative essay about, I don't know, US-China trade, if you felt that was really important in 2019. But remember, you'd have to have a lot of expert knowledge to do that. So that topic goes anywhere. Finally, there was. So this is 1.2. I think the first thing that we think of is a narrative essay. Finally, there was. But do you see, it could be a description. Finally, there was, I don't know, I once had a whole lot of spiders that hatched out in my classroom. It was so exciting. So this makes me think as well, is one day I found a tiny scorpion in my classroom. I've got an old lab, so it's got 2 basins. And there was this little scorpion in the basin. I haven't seen a scorpion for ages. That was so exciting. So I can't think of anything else at the moment, but maybe I could write a series of descriptions of things that I have seen in my classroom. Oh, I do remember one, so sad. There was a very sick pigeon that walked into my classroom and just sat there, and I didn't know what to do with it. So, you know what it's like? You're locking up at the end of the day. You feel you can't lock this pigeon into the classroom. So I didn't really know it was sick. But there was something clearly wrong with it. So I sort of said to it, you can't sit in the classroom. What if you want to get out? So come on, come on, come on. And I got it just to the door, and it sat there, and I said, well, all right, if that's what you want to do. And I locked up the classroom and went home, and you know what's coming, don't you? It was dead the next morning outside my classroom, and I thought I should have left it inside. At least it could have died with a bit of protection. So do you see, I'm starting to see creatures in my classroom. Can I think of anything else at the moment? No. But I'm sure I could if I spent a bit of time planning. So do you see that finally I could do the scorpion first, then I could do the little spiders that were under the fire extinguisher. So the fire extinguisher's on the wall like that, with its little handle. And this spider put its little nesty thing, all of its little blobby things there. And then they all came out immediately. It was so exciting. Anyway, right, and then I could do, finally, there was the pigeon. So do you see, what am I doing with these topics? I'm looking at how do I respond? What do I think about? Finally, could be an argument, could be an opinion, could be persuasion, it could be any of it. Then I realize I'm responsible for my own happiness. Now, people, my heart sinks when I look at this topic, because what am I expecting to get is a sermon or an LO lesson. Please don't do that. We go to church to hear sermons, and we go to LO lessons to get an LO lesson. I realize I'm responsible for my own happiness. Stop and think about this topic. You want your writing to have your own voice. Now, how do you get your own voice? By using your own experience. If you preach at me about being responsible for your own happiness, if you don't study and you fail, that's all your fault. If you choose the wrong friends and they lead you astray, that's your own fault. Your friends bully you, but I realize that I'm responsible for my own happiness. This is all dull because it's general. It could be written by anybody. You want to make it your own. And how do you do that? By telling me something unique to you. So tell me about either one experience that you've had or a number of them, depending on, or a few, depending on how you plan to structure your essay. And tell me about that own experience, either when you made your own happiness or when you lost your own happiness because you didn't take responsibility for making your own happiness. But tell me something real. Keep it real. I say this is why we used to teach hip-hop before CAPS told us we couldn't do it anymore. Keep it real. I want to believe in this and being responsible for your own happiness. Don't preach. I don't want to be lectured by a 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old. You can't say things like, you are responsible for your happiness and you must remember this. Sorry? Excuse me? Who are you talking to? So go back to your gaps. Who is your audience? In an exam essay, it is the marker. And the marker can be anything from sort of 20 to 60. You can't say to the marker, you're responsible for your own happiness. You should remember this. Who you're talking to. And I get quite offended when I'm spoken to like that. by a grade 11, for example, or a grade 8. So the grade 10s of this year remember vividly what they did in grade 8 when the topic was about choices. And child after child after child said, you make your own choices. You are responsible for your choices. You are responsible for the consequences of your choices. And when I got them to deliver these as speeches, they began to say, okay, all right, we all said the same thing. We get that now. And they laughed about it in grade 9, and I'm sure they would laugh about it now. I will check if I bump into any of them. So guys, don't tell me these things. I know I make choices. Tell me about your choice. When did you choose to make your own happiness? Or do you disagree with that? What does it say? You're responsible. What is it? I realize I'm responsible. But possibly you can't be responsible all the time. How do you make happiness in a really difficult situation? How have you found it under lockdown? Have you managed to carve out some happiness for yourself? Tell me about it. Tell me about me. Don't say you. Don't address me. Remember, in your style, the minute you say you, what is your relationship with that audience? You are taking a position of authority. You are telling your audience, which means that you are putting yourself in a superior position and talking down to your audience. This is one of the biggest problems with speeches. When you write speeches as part of your transactional writing, is I will sit for the grade 11s, give a speech to the grade 9s, and the grade 11s talk to the grade 9s as if they were some kind of dictator who's very wise and tell the grade 9s how useless they are. So be very, very careful of you. Who uses you in your life? Your parents, your teachers, your pastor. Do you see? Be very careful about putting yourself in that position. So talk to me in that particular topic about yourself, what you're doing. Right, the next one is a quote from a poem by Robert Frost. This is not a literary essay. This is a creative essay. Now, you asked, what kind of essay could you write? Well, like any kind of essay. Right, we've got good fences make good neighbors. Start by saying to yourself, what does that mean? It means that if you can have privacy here from your neighbor there will be peace and harmony and a friendly relationship. Now, the first thing is, don't tell me what it means. I can work out what it means. What would I like? Well, I suppose you've gathered. I don't like discursive, argumentative, opinionative essays. Why? Because they tend to become very boring. Like the essay I told you about with this grade 11 telling me that we've had COVID and we've had lockdown, and you feel like saying, well, I actually am living in the same world as you. I do know about this. Then the child told me that a lot of people lost their jobs, but things are looking up, and you wonder if they saw the last quarter job statistics of people who are unemployed. It's gone up. Why? Well, we know why, because we read, we know all of this. So don't tell me things I know. Don't tell me things that you don't know enough about. So don't tell me what this topic means. Right. Rather, do you have a problem with a neighbor? And could you tell me about that? So again, where do I go? I go to my own experience. So I live in a block of flats, so there are lots of us, and there's a lot of noise at times from various people. So I could do some of the stories of the noise and the difficulty, and if we actually had soundproofing, we might actually get on better. But, and I would say this is a big but, for me, living in a block of flats means that you have neighbors and you know those neighbors, and there's friendliness, not because of the fences, but because of the communication. So I might want to write a discursive essay. Part of my essay would be, yeah, I get it, that we need privacy. I do not want the little children on the first floor running into my flat when I'm marking the grade 11 paper 3, or I'm on a Zoom lesson with the matrics for paper 2, obviously. But on the other hand, having people living very close means you get to know people. And I could tell you some stories of the importance of having neighbors. For me, one of the most important evenings was when my father phoned and said that my mother had died. And I had 2 little children. But now I need to get to my father. And I walked out of the flat and I rang the doorbell. In fact, I started down there. I rang the doorbell there because there's a very nice woman and she didn't answer. So I rang this doorbell where there is a man. And by the time they both came out, and I said to them, I've got to go. My mother's just died. I'm going to my dad. They're the children. You'll find the food. You have to bath them. And I left them in the corridor saying, okay, who's going to do which duty? And I walked out and left my children to my neighbors. So good fences make good neighbors. Yeah, but. And I'd rather talk about knowing people and communicating with people and having people you can talk to. Like I always knew if I needed potato, go this side. Or the lady down there was always going to loan me an iron if I suddenly didn't have an iron and I needed to iron before school. So COVID has really changed things. But, and these people would have rice, and that person would, that kind of community, that people care about you. So I would like to argue against this. Yes, privacy is important, but having neighbors makes it very, very special. So do you understand? What am I writing? I'm writing an opinionative, discursive, reflective, descriptive, narrative-y kind of essay. I'm mixing it all together to try to share some of my experience with you. Let's look at the next one. That's easy. Choose somebody. So with this, I remember years ago, funnily I was talking to some of my classes about this recently. It's a long time ago when we had standard grade. And the topic for matric was my mother, my hero. And I read some of the most amazing essays, especially about black women in this country. Those essays were incredible. The insight that these students gave into their mothers' lives was just wonderful. Sometimes heartbreaking, sometimes disturbing, but always uplifting. And I loved marking that year. Those essays were incredible. So an amazing person. It's descriptive and it's narrative. And it could be reflective. There could be a little bit of opinion and discussion, but I think it's going to go to that. Look at the next one. Again, be careful that you don't write a very generalized essay. That if people can think of something, they can achieve it. And please don't tell me about the Wright brothers and the first aeroplane, or Elon Musk or the things everybody knows. That's the danger, is that what you know about that comes instantly into your mind is what comes into the mind of every other person. And then the essays all sound the same. Now, one of my students said to me recently, what if you are the first person to be marked? So let's say you're writing this about if there's a human mind that can think of something, then that can be achieved. And you write about Nelson Mandela and Elon Musk and the Wright brothers, and what else is terribly obvious? Einstein, okay, right, whatever. And this student said to me, this essay might get a distinction because it's the first one, but by the time the marker has marked 200 of them, the person's getting a D. Remember, you're marking against a rubric. You're not marking against each other. You're not saying, because I have read this essay so many times. You're marking against a rubric. And if we're looking at the content, so here I'm not looking at the language and I'm not looking at the structure, but I'm just looking at the content. If you get a not achieved, that really is unusual, because whatever you're writing about the mind, whatever, it's not achieved. Then this one is like an unsatisfactory. But most students end up in the moderate category. They're actually two above. There's skillful and there's exceptional. So most students just end up there in the moderate category. Why? Because look at this essay. The human mind conceived of racial equality and a black government. The human mind conceived of sending people into space and having hotels in space or whatever. The human mind conceived of flight. The human mind conceived of the theory of relativity. You know, you're just writing, so it's moderate. Why? Because there's nothing unique. There's nothing of your own. You are rehashing. Do you know that term? You are rehashing something everybody knows. So even if you are the very first person to write this, you are the first essay. I've opened this essay. And remember, when I open the essay, I'm always excited. This essay is going to share something special with me. I can't wait. Essay marking is exciting. And then you start with, what is the human mind? Oh no. You know, then my heart starts to sink. But you mark the essay, you give it the best attention you can, and then you move on. But what am I saying is that even if it's the very first one, you're going to be in the moderate category for content, because there's nothing special, unique, or exciting about your content. So you're not going to get into this category or this category because there isn't anything there. I'm going, yeah, I know that. Yes, I know that. Yes, I've seen that before. Right, is that all the topics? Yes. Then we've got a picture, but the pictures weren't sent. So can I now talk about why this paper is so important? So your writing paper is a lot of marks. This is the paper that if you want that clear distinction, you want that 90% because you're going for a bursary, a scholarship, this is the paper that's going to get it. What if you are battling, but you want a 60% plus, you're hoping to go on and study further? This is the paper that's going to get it for you. What if English is not your strong point and you're really quite anxious that you're going to end up with the 40%. This is the paper that's going to get you close to that. So I don't care which kind of candidate you are and where you fall. This paper is critical. Right. Now, a lot of students feel that either you can write or you can't. Nonsense. The only way you learn to write is if you practice. You need practice. So please, between now and the end, you need to write some essays. You need to write transactional writing. If you find that you haven't got a lot of time, then at least plan. And all the time say to yourself, what about my gaps? What is my purpose? My purpose is to share something. And I'm thinking now of the essay, section A. To share something with the marker that I really care about. So let us say that you are a basketball player. You look through the topics to see, I'm not saying you should force the topic, to see if there's something on basketball. 2019, yes. Finally there was, yes. Responsible for my own happiness, yes. Good fences, don't think so. An amazing person could be your basketball coach, and then whatever the mind can conceive and believe they can achieve, basketball. So in fact, ironically, everything fits with basketball. I'm not suggesting that you write an essay and you learn it off by heart and you rewrite it. That can often lose energy, vitality, sparkle. And anyway, this is meant to be creative writing. You're meant to do it in the exam. If the examiners wanted you to prepare it, they'd give you the topics beforehand. Okay, but you need to practice writing. Please, practice your writing. Look for something to share. If nothing fits basketball, then look at each topic and say, well, what is there that I want to share or that I could share that would fit into this topic? And then write. Practice. We'll talk more. We've got some time before paper 3. So please join me again, and I look forward to seeing you all. Okay, thank you. From me, bye-bye.